All right, everybody, welcome to our fourth AMA live stream of 2019. We are here today with Harmony, none other than Harmony Protocol co-founder Nick White is talking with us. Nick, how's it going, man? How you doing today?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. It's a lovely day down here in Cupertino, where we're based. Couldn't be more excited to talk to you guys about Harmony today.
Yeah, so Nick is really deeply involved in a lot of the protocol research on the tech side, but a lot of the business development as well. He's a co-founder with the team. So listen, Nick, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your background and about the team's background. Like, how did you meet the founders? How did you guys start to work on the protocol?
Sure. So I grew up actually in Hawaii. And ever since I was a little kid, I loved math and science. I loved technology. So I ended up going to Stanford, where I studied electrical engineering, and my path in electrical engineering led me into neural networks, specifically adaptive signal processing, and that kind of took me down a path of AI. And while I was doing AI, I was working at an AI incubator in Hong Kong called Zeroth AI, and we coached companies from all over the world and helped them develop their projects. And during that time in Hong Kong, I kind of caught the blockchain bug, and I started researching it. And with my background in electrical engineering and computer science, it all made sense to me. And so after about a year and a half at Zeroth, I decided that I wanted to, jump ship and make the transition to blockchain. And so around that time, I also went to a blockchain dinner in Shenzhen, which is near Hong Kong. And Stephen, he's actually originally from Hong Kong, the founder of Harmony. And he and I met at that dinner. We discussed a lot of things. We both decided that actually of the different challenges facing blockchain as a new technology platform, one of the biggest ones was scalability. And in order for blockchains to really realize their huge potential to bring more equality, more transparency, more efficiency to the global economy, we needed to solve that problem. And kind of from that day, we kept in touch. And eventually, when Stephen came out with the Harmony white paper, I reviewed it and also helped fundraise and decided to join as a co-founder. So that's kind of how I got started. But the rest of the team also kind of met. A lot of them actually come from here in the Bay Area because they're engineers at Google, Apple, or Amazon. And Stephen was running a meetup called TGI, which met every Thursday in Sunnyvale. And it had a lot of people interested in lots of different kinds of tech, AI, but it kind of turned towards blockchain kind of around the time that I was getting into it as well. And I think through that community, he met lots of really talented engineers that also wanted to tackle this problem of scalability. And they saw, from their experience working at, Google Play Store or an Apple Siri or Amazon AWS, they saw the potential to leverage the insights and the knowledge and techniques from these, large tech companies to scale blockchain infrastructure. Because a lot of the people that have been working on blockchain up until that point were more hobbyists. I mean, a lot of them are very intelligent and really, really clever, but there was kind of some low-hanging fruit in terms of if you really built large-scale systems before and deployed them, they're kind of engineering tricks of the trade that you could bring to bear. And so that's kind of how Harmony came together.
Okay. So what time period was that where you were starting to work with Stephen and meet the rest of the team? Was that 2017, back in 2015? Like when exactly was that happening?
Yeah, so I met Stephen in early 2018, but Stephen had been thinking about the architecture of Harmony since 2017. And that's also when I was starting to spend a lot of time myself researching the technology of blockchain, but I hadn't made the career transition yet. And so Harmony officially formed around mid 2018. That's when we raised our seed round, and that's when everyone kind of left their jobs. Most people were already working in their current positions at Google or other companies, and then we left our jobs and came full time into Harmony.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So I'm a little curious about, so Harmony's main goal is open consensus for 10 billion people, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I was just wondering what that means to you.
Yeah. So open consensus for 10 billion people comes from this idea that, in 2050, people have projected that the world population will level out at around, give or take 10 billion people. And we imagine in that future world in 2050 that blockchain will play a major role in, facilitating trade and finance and the internet and all kinds of, it'll be, a key component to the global economy. And we need to design a blockchain that's not just suitable for, right now, which is, let's say even like a few tens of thousands of transactions per second in the next few years. It needs to be able to scale to millions, if not more, transactions per second to serve that role at a future date. So our vision is to design a blockchain that aspires to scale to that level, because you need to set the infrastructure right from the very beginning in order to get there in the long range. So even if, let's say there's some quick fixes, like, let's do distributed proof of stake. Like all of a sudden we can get, 100 or 1,000 TPS. That's all good and it works for now, but you're not taking the long range vision that you need to really achieve scalability for the full future when there are, let's say, 10 billion people. And I think it's more than just, open consensus for 10 billion people. Also, that's kind of confusing. It can be a little technical. When we say open consensus, what we mean is sort of like, trust. We say now a little bit more, kind of our tagline is transitioning towards scaling trust to billions of people. And so what that means, like, blockchain is sort of a trust machine. It's a way of enabling people who may not know each other to come together and coordinate and collaborate. If you think about Bitcoin, it's like people that don't even know each other. They're just on the internet, but miners and speculators and developers and everyone are coming together and creating value, right?
Right.
And so that's where the open consensus comes in. Is that's sort of like our way of explaining the key innovation and contribution of what blockchains enable.
Right. So what you're saying is you guys are pumping up like short-term cash grab.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
No, you're in it for the long haul. You're in it for the long haul. I mean, you're looking at 2050 and scaling the digital economy. I mean, that's laudable.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're all dreamers, or we're real believers, and that's why I love working on this team, because I feel like I get to be surrounded by such positive energy and people who are so committed that I feel like I'm really part of something bigger than anything I've worked on in the past. And it's just, there's something about that, having that vision and having that aspiration to do something great, not just for yourself, but for the world, that really resonates here on our team.
Yeah, I can imagine. So one thing I thought was really interesting about the project that you're building out is, so the scalability upgrades that you're really championing, they're a mix of some newer and some older technologies. I mean, from Google's UDP, Mosaic, Bloom filters. I'll be honest, I don't fully understand the really base level details of a lot of the tech, but a lot of these are in production already. I mean, Google, is using UDP. And so what I was wondering is, if you're looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum's throughput issues, what made Stephen really confident that they could solve some of those problems with some tech that's already being used, and not some of the tech that, these teams are talking about building in the next, couple of years?
Yeah, so I think the sort of going back to what I was saying earlier when I was talking about how Harmony came together. One of the core theses that we had was, we're coming from the background of large tech companies that are building things like Google Search or Google Maps or Siri or even just the AWS infrastructure. And if you're working on those large scale real systems, you have actually built the code and seen it scale to millions and actually billions of users. So you kind of know what it takes to achieve scale, and so it's a combination of just the practical experience of having done it on the other kind of other side, combined with the fact that there's also a lot of aspects that have been overlooked in the discussion and are now kind of becoming more popular and more discussed in the technical community and blockchain. But one of the big ones, for example, was networking. That very few people had discussed how networking was a really major bottleneck for blockchains, because it's not just about like, oh, how fast can your consensus protocol be, right? Because in theory, your consensus protocol can, minimize or optimize the amount of communication, but then it's even like, well, then how do you propagate all those transactions? How do you get all those blocks synced across the whole network? So there's a lot of things that people were kind of overlooking because they were only looking at the top layer of the stack, and we wanted to take it lower, right? And so we're really, really keen on networking and leveraging all the new research and some of the best techniques. I can mention some of the things that we're implementing in our white paper, including Kademlia routing, RaptorQ, erasure coding, and a new technique called adaptive information dispersal, which is how we sync blocks within a shard. And then I think another thing which is a little bit longer term that people hadn't really discussed too much is our focus on systems. So in the long range, I think a key optimization for any blockchain protocol will be developing a mission-specific kernel for the nodes that are running the consensus algorithms, and that can really parallelize the throughput and achieve more speed and more efficiency. So it's a combination of basically leveraging practical engineering with sort of the best new research and looking in places where people haven't really thought that those things apply to blockchain.
Okay. Sort of closing the gap between what everybody is ideating on for 2020 and comparing that and sort of marrying that with what's been working and what AWS and everything else is built on top of already.
Yeah. So I think another thing is like, I think a lot of what sold in the past, like in 2017 or 2018, was people coming up with new consensus algorithms or trying to sell something that's novel. And it's kind of just for the sake of being new, right? And the truth is that, our approach is a little bit more, even though it may be less sexy on the surface, it's more about, okay, there's a lot of things that already exist and are battle tested, maybe not in blockchain, but they've been proven in other industries. And how can we take each of those components and as a recipe kind of combine them together and create something that's really fast and really scalable. And no one else at the time was really looking at the problem in that way. And it's actually easy, instead of trying to create something new, which obviously also in crypto is not really a good practice because it can be dangerous to roll your own crypto. But we're just taking the easier route of standing on the shoulders of giants.
Okay. So I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about where you're at currently on the existing roadmap and where the project is planned to be in the next year.
Yeah. So we have a working dev net. We're going to roll out a full test net on February 15th. So stay tuned for that. There'll be more functionality. But right now we have a little sort of proof of concept dev net where you can send transactions. There are 2 shards running. But there'll be a lot more functionality coming out on February 15th. So I would say we've built a lot of the back-end consensus. There's still some key features to implement. You can check out our GitHub. We're open source, so you can see where we are. And we're planning to basically release more features every month, the 15th of every month, until June when we plan to launch the mainnet. And even when we launch the mainnet, we're still going to be continuing to improve on the protocol and add more features. In the long range, so for at the beginning, we'll have more basic smart contract support like EVM and Solidity, but in the long range, we are going to implement WebAssembly. So that's another thing that is coming down the pipeline. But for now, we want to basically by June we want to have shipped something that's live, because we have a lot of partners that want to start building on us already. So we have to kind of get the ball rolling and have something. We'd rather have something, even if it's a little more bare bones, that's live and running, and then kind of build it organically from there. So that's where we are in terms of development.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So speaking of partners, it looks like you guys back in late January started accepting applications for what you're calling foundation nodes. So I wanted to ask a little bit about that. So what exactly is a foundation node compared to just your average node on a network? And what are the benefits that might be available to a foundation node? Like, why would somebody sign up for that specifically?
Yeah, so the foundational node operator program is a way for us. We're trying to, so we decided to go with a proof of stake model for a lot of reasons. Proof of stake is, so if you go proof of work, I mean, you have to maybe design your own proof of work so you're not susceptible to attacks by, big miners. I mean, we saw this with Ethereum Classic, and it's sort of like proof of work has a lot of trouble if you're trying to start a new network. But also, proof of work fundamentally is just not very efficient, and it ends up resulting in more costs for users. So we went with proof of stake. I'm getting a little off topic, but so the foundational node program, because we're proof of stake, it's difficult for us to you can't just earn your way in. You have to have a minimum amount of tokens to stake if you want to become a miner, right? So that becomes difficult. We want to build a
Oh, hey, Nick. I think
genuinely.
there's some clipping or some delay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, Nick. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. We're back on.
Okay.
All right. Great. Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody.
No worries. All good now?
Yeah. I can hear you. Let me double check with everybody else, but I think we're all good. So we were talking proof of stake, and we were talking.
Yeah. So the foundational node program is a way for people who weren't able to participate in our original fundraising to have access to tokens so that they can stake and be miners, because we want to decentralize the network from the very beginning. So we need like a strong base of people that want to run nodes for us. And so this is a way for us to kind of open it up to the community and let them join and be part of it. And I think there are a lot of benefits to it. One of the major benefits is that as a foundational node partner, you get additional incentives beyond just the mining rewards. So you get kind of additional tokens on top of what you would already earn. So it should hopefully be more financially more of a financial reward. But in addition, we think of these people more as like part of the team, and they get to be kind of on the inside and get to work more closely with us, because it's also going to take a lot of work for us to make sure the code is ready and easy for people to join, so that they'll be involved in us kind of rolling out the kinds of code that will help people help make, like, streamline the process. Because in the future, we want it to be very, very easy for people to spin up a Harmony node and join the network. And so they'll be kind of on the inside, working with us. And it'll be kind of it's a way for us to extend our community more than anything else.
Okay. And so beyond these, I think it's about 100 foundational nodes. There will be opportunities for other nodes in the future, like especially during the mainnet and after the mainnet release, for somebody to just join the network, even outside of these core 100. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, at the very least, people will be able to acquire enough tokens to stake on their own and run a node. We've also considered doing something along the lines of what we call a node drop, which is essentially, we have to still work out the details, but it's sort of like an airdrop. But imagine, rather than airdropping because you liked us on Twitter or something, or followed us, it's we will kind of proxy stake for you, so you get to run a node, and by running a node, you not only earn the rewards, but eventually earn enough tokens to continue staking and running a miner into the future. So it's sort of like you earn your way into the protocol that way, without capital up front, but you don't get any of the bonuses of the foundational node program.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so we're really excited to do. We're still thinking out the details. But I really want to do it because I think it's the perfect way. Like, traditional airdrops never really made sense to me in terms of, it just felt like, you're giving away tokens to people who, I mean, they've done something, but they haven't really added value to the network.
Mm.
It seems more for show. And this node drop is you're really adding value. You're supporting the network with by processing transactions and helping us increase our throughput, increasing our security. So that's, you really have proven to us that you care and you deserve tokens in return for that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I got to be honest. I have probably like 30 different coins that I've been airdropped, just for holding like,
Right?
XYZ coin over like the course of a year or whatever. I have no idea what the hell any of them do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But in this case, it's almost an exchange, right? Because you wouldn't be airdropping coins. You would be exchanging the rewards for somebody's, computational power to secure the network, but you're also fronting them the capital in a way to, operate on the network in the first place. Like that's really cool. I've never heard of a model like that.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we actually just talk a little bit about the staking minimums? Like, do you have any rough idea what those minimums are going to look like? Is there a maximum for a node to stake? Is there a time period that they would have to keep their funds locked up?
Yeah, so this is all part of our, we have sort of like a adaptive staking mechanism that is described in our white paper. But basically there's no like minimum stake per se. And we're trying to make it such that even we want to minimize pooling, right? So we want to make it so that even if you only have a small amount of stake, hopefully that's enough to participate in the network without joining some sort of mining pool. So we don't want it to be like a masternode kind of thing where, there's only like 100 nodes or something. And furthermore, that actually undermines the security of the network. We want to have the more granularity. Well, it's a trade-off. The more like granularity you have, like the more nodes you have, the more secure you are, because then the more evenly distributed, in theory, the malicious and the honest nodes are in each node. But then on the other hand, by having more nodes, you also actually you make the network slower, because then you have more participants in each shard, and then each shard has to do more communication internally to come to consensus. So it's a bit of a trade-off there, but our adaptive staking thing basically makes it so that if as long as you pass the sort of the minimum threshold varies from each epoch. And even if you're larger than like your stake basically gets divided into a corresponding number of votes, like voting shares, and those voting shares then get sharded into different shards. And so even if, let's say you have enough stake to be like 20 voting shares, if they're like 20 shards, then you may have only one vote per shard. Or if you have only enough for like 2 shares, then you get split up as well. I mean, in theory, you could also, all those 20 shares could end up in the same shard, but the statistical likelihood of that is very low, because we shard everything randomly. So in terms of the crypto economics of staking, that's something that we're still working on. So far, we in the white paper, if you read it, it's mostly focuses on our technical sort of blueprint. It's sort of our architecture on the technology side. So there's still a lot that we're working on in terms of crypto economics. So we don't have a definite answer. And in fact, we need ourselves to do more testing internally. This will also happen on our testnet of what kind of level of machines we need. Like what's the minimum amount of memory that your node should have? Like how much RAM, how much storage do you need? All these things need to kind of be sorted out before we figure out what the costs will be for operating a node, and that will help us then kind of design the crypto economics to support the miners. But at any rate, it should be much cheaper to run a node on Harmony than it is to run any kind of proof of work chain.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Makes a lot of sense. All right. So we're actually going to switch in about 5 minutes to open the floor and, take some questions from Cryptocopia. So just a heads up, everybody. Make sure you're posting your questions in the AMA thread. We're watching for them, and we're getting ready to ask Nick whatever is on your mind.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to some good questions.
In the meantime, though, I just wanted to ask you about what kind of DApps you think might pop up on Harmony, this year, next year. Specifically, I saw that partnership that you guys announced with Monica. And I was wondering how that's going, if you're working on their game Sandbox, that was a really big hit, and getting some kind of information from that. What is that looking like for right now?
Yeah, so in terms of DApps, there's a lot of different exciting applications out there. Animoca is a great partner. We're really excited to work with them. I happened to meet Yat and get to know them while I was in Hong Kong, actually. That's where their main studio is based. They have studios on lots of different places. And Yat is really he's really committed to this idea of blockchain gaming. And he has a lot of great ideas of how to integrate the games that he already has and integrate blockchain into them. But so gaming is one of them, and we want to work with Animoca for sure. Stephen actually was just in Hong Kong for Chinese New Year and to meet with people there. So he met with Yat. I haven't actually caught up with him to hear how the conversation went, but definitely hoping for that in the future. There's lots of different people kind of in our extended community who are planning to build on Harmony. There's one called Patronus that it wants to build a education credential sort of system. There's another one called Quanta that is building a decentralized exchange. Our friends Timeless, they're building a sort of a calendar DApp. We have friends called Namika who are building a security tokenization kind of white labeling service. And in fact, one of my friends from India, I've been speaking to him. He wants to leverage Namika he has his own real estate tokenization, or it's a real estate privatization company, and he wants to sort of apply blockchain. So these are just, a number of partners kind of off the top of my head. There are tons and tons. Recently, Lee and Stephen were down in Vietnam, and they were meeting with, Gojek and Grab and some of these sort of larger applications there's a lot of, I think, so let me take a step back and say that aside from all these projects I was just mentioning, we really see a great amount of promise in basically doing the reverse ICO model. And I don't want to, I only use reverse ICO as the phrase because that's what it's kind of been dubbed, but I don't think the ICO is really relevant anymore. But the reverse ICO is the concept that you can take an existing application with lots of users, and perhaps that application can be improved in some way using blockchain in the back end. And that's a really good target market for us, target audience, because a lot of these enterprises or a lot of these apps, they've been looking at blockchain. They wish they could add some feature, but Ethereum and existing blockchains just aren't scalable enough to actually pull that off. And so we want to come in and say, hey, we've worked with, we worked on the inside of large tech companies before. We know how you guys operate. We have a scalable solution. Let's work together. We can plug in Harmony in the back end, and all of a sudden, Grab can have transparent surge pricing on their platform, something to that degree. So reverse ICOs are, I think, a really rich way for us to get users, and to, rather than pure DApps, they're sort of like in between. It's like an application that wants to move a little bit more towards the decentralization, or add some sort of layer of blockchain technology. So that's something I'm very excited about.
Okay.
Also, being in the Bay Area is a huge advantage because we have tons of entrepreneurs that come to our meetups every week, all either building their own blockchain thing, or they're working in their own startups or their own company, and they want to. It's a great way for us to pull people into our ecosystem.
Right. You're in the middle of it. Yeah. No, that absolutely. All right. Well, speaking of in the middle of it, why don't we get Cryptocopia involved here?
That's good.
Let's do it, you guys. What do you want to know from Nick? Vindine8 is asking, what do the token specs look like? What's the total supply, the reward, the split by the validators? What are the economics there?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of supply, there are 21 billion tokens in total. It's just a number. It's 21 million was Bitcoin, and we just decided add 1,000x because we want to be 1,000x of Bitcoin. And anyway, in terms of the token economics, again, unfortunately, we need more clarity even on our end in terms of how expensive it'll be to run nodes before we have any concrete numbers with regard to that. But we're thinking very carefully about transaction fees, also storage rent, some of these key kind of crypto economic designs to make Harmony. I mean, the main goals are basically one, user experience, right? So you want to make it so that users don't have to necessarily pay gas fees up front, or it's not a pay to play, because that can really end up damaging the experience and the ability to onboard users. The other thing is we want to minimize costs as well, and but also keep the blockchain lean, right? So that's where it's like storage rent comes in terms of like, you shouldn't be able to just push your contract on and then all of a sudden people have to remember it forever for the rest of the history of the chain. There should be some sort of way of incentivizing people to remove old data or clean up after themselves, essentially. But the last thing also is we want to make sure that it's low cost, because that's another thing that's really barring a lot of applications from being realized. Like, let's say I wanted to use blockchain for some sort of IoT application. If every time I have thousands of sensors, every time they send a transaction, it's 20 cents, then it doesn't make sense to use blockchain. So we need to make that cost sub cents, like maybe 1,000th or less, so that it's so cheap that you wouldn't think twice. It's sort of the same way that when you use the internet now, people are so conditioned for it to be free that they don't want to pay any kind of fee. So obviously blockchains are expensive to run, so you need to have some way of support. But how can we make that the most efficient, so that it's as user friendly, as cost effective as possible? So again, I wish I had a more clear answer in terms of the real numbers, and we're working on that, but we don't have a full answer for you yet.
I mean, if you asked everybody, to spend a cent or two for every email that they send starting today, people would flip out. When you're building on that protocol level, I would assume it has to be cheap, or at least that's the best way to incentivize people to, join the network.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's also sort of like, I wouldn't take the EOS model, but in terms of putting some of the costs, at least upfront, maybe on the DApp developer, or there's got to be creative ways of keeping the costs hidden, at least to a certain point, and then when the user is sort of like already adopted in the ecosystem, it's sort of like it's like a freemium kind of thing, when I first try out an app, like it's a subscription, I get it free for a month, and then now I see the value in it, so now I'm willing to put some money in to use it. But at first, it would be too much friction to be like, oh, well, set up your wallet, put money in, and now you can start using the application. So we want to kind of enable that.
Okay. All right. Next up, from Buddy Boy, they're wondering, how will Harmony incentivize developers to build on their network?
Very, very good question. So we've actually been looking into Gitcoin and other kinds of platforms like that, where we can offer bounties for people to solve some of our GitHub issues. So that's a big one. We're also actually actively looking for developer labs that want to help build out some of the tooling. So there's one here in San Francisco that we're working with to build out some of the sort of tooling ecosystem for developers, so it's easier for them to get onboarded and use Harmony from the get-go. In terms of like, if you want to start working on our core protocol, we would love to have you join our Discord and start chatting with us. We're all in open development, and if you start to really contribute in a meaningful way, then we would love to reward you with tokens, in a very fair way. So we really welcome people to get involved and dig in. So just honestly, come to our Discord and chat with us. And if there's something that you feel passionate about, like, oh well, I want to build the block explorer, or I want to build the wallet, or whatever, come talk to us and we can work something out. So we would love to welcome those kind of developers to work with us.
Okay, I love it. All right, next up, let's see. We've got Cryptomaniac. Cryptomaniac is wondering next milestones of the roadmap. I know we talked about the roadmap a little bit, but like especially from a marketing standpoint, what's your strategy to get partnerships with some of the bigger companies and gain users for the protocol?
Very good question. So right now, in terms of going after partnerships, as I said earlier, we're kind of leveraging our network, which is pretty extensive throughout the Bay Area, at least. And we've been doing trips out to Asia and other like key ecosystems to try to meet people on the ground. We are now also kind of engaging with ambassadors. So there are people now in Europe or in countries in Asia where they're now kind of being empowered to represent Harmony. And so that's we kind of want to take it more grassroots, organic approach to this, and not do any kind of we don't want to pay and be like, oh, we're a big deal. We want to kind of start from the bottom and really build in the true believers. We want people to we want to attract the kind of people that are really involved in blockchain for the right reasons and that care enough, genuinely care enough that they want to help us out. So at least that's how we want to build our community. And so if there are any people listening that want to be involved in terms of representing Harmony or hosting meetups wherever they are in the world, we'd love to chat with you. So again, I think Discord's the best place to join us to have those conversations. In terms of partnerships, I would say that we have like a lot of partnerships kind of in the pipeline right now. So we kind of have a lot going on. I think maybe as some of those partnerships come to fruition, as we sign more contracts, then maybe that will lead to more business as well. But for now, although we haven't announced many of these, we have some coming. So that's something that we're really working hard on. And those are just kind of coming organically through our network, and hopefully that will kind of snowball into something bigger.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're excited. We're definitely going to keep our eyes peeled, or at least I am. I can't speak for everybody. But so if anybody's interested in maybe building that Block Explorer or working with you guys on their idea, you said the Discord is the best place probably to reach out. Is there any person in particular they should look for? Just kind of put their hand up in the Discord and see what happens?
Yeah, put your hand up, and we're pretty quick to respond. If not me or Lee or Gavin or Mary, or even our developers, the core developers will just hop right in and start chatting with you. So yeah, if you just raise your hand and say, hey, I'm interested to work with you guys, and we'll be right there.
Awesome. All right. So next up, Yiki is asking, do we really need another blockchain coin? I mean, 2017, 2018 saw a lot of fundraising, and I know we haven't talked about fundraising, but, I guess every project is looked at a little bit more critically. After the rise and fall of prices, than before. So what are your guys' strengths? Like, what are you going to do that's going to see Harmony outlive, the competition?
Very good question. And I think it's really important to be asking these questions, because what we saw, in the last couple of years with the whole boom was a little bit irrational, a little bit over exuberant. And now I think if anything, now we're kind of more in a winter stage. People are a little more skeptical, and I think rightfully so. We need to be asking ourselves the hard questions of, why are we doing this? What is really the use of blockchain, or what is the use of a new protocol? So I really like that question. And I think, again, going back to Harmony's primary vision, we're trying to deliver scalability, right? And if we are going to see another wave of crypto, if we're going to see real adoption, like meaningful adoption, we need to solve that problem. And of course, there's not a scarcity of other projects going after that same vision. But the thing is that honestly, scaling blockchain is an extremely, extremely difficult problem. And so it's like, I wouldn't want to rest that, and it's so important, it's such an important problem to solve, that I wouldn't want to rest that on any one given project, even 10. I honestly think there's more room for more good projects to try to solve this problem than there are that exist right now. The thing is that there was also just so many people that raised money last year who weren't actually that serious in the end about doing this. We are very serious about this. And so what is Harmony going to do that's different or better? It kind of comes back to what I was speaking on in the beginning, which is that we're a team who has really built large-scale infrastructure before at large tech companies. So this is something that's kind of baked into our DNA. So I think we kind of contribute a level of execution that maybe wasn't present, or I think there are now like very top projects also in the space with this kind of experience. But I think that we sort of are trying to raise the bar in terms of like how well blockchains are built. And the last thing I think that at least gives us an advantage over certain other projects is that we're now, it's sort of like the innovator's dilemma, right? Where like big companies, like when a company grows to a certain size, it's harder for them to stay relevant, harder for them to innovate and pivot and be nimble. And we're luckily, I think being small is actually works to our advantage. We're more nimble. We're able to execute faster in a given direction and not have to deal with bureaucracy or trying to convince the community to go one way or the other. We can kind of, ironically, the centralization is actually like very useful, at least at the beginning, because we can execute faster. We're all here in this office, so all of our developer discussions happen, right then, right there. There's no like, oh, we'll schedule a Skype meeting. It's just like 24/7. We're on the go. So I think in terms of execution, we have a big advantage as well. And again, if you look at a lot of our competitors too, there's so many different trade-offs, right? And who knows which one is going to work out? But we're taking a lot of, there's a lot of projects that are very similar in terms of the sharding approach. But even within sharding, there's such a richness of variety of different trade-offs that you can choose. And so I think each one of those, maybe they'll all be successful, maybe only one will win out. It's hard to really know, but we're making a different set of trade-offs that may be applicable for a certain use case. So overall, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I would say so. And we will find out from Yuki if that's not the case, but looks like it so far. Thank you, Nick. Oh my God, I love this handle. Insane Ooze. Insane Ooze wants to know how you calculated the on-chain speed. And also just, what kind of values you used and if there are proxies in the calculation. Because I know the speed of the Harmony protocol is a huge reason that, you guys are so excited about what you're bringing to the space. So if you could tell us a little bit about how you calculated that.
How we calculate the transactions per second or the latency or what?
It's just speed. So why don't we do both? If that's all right. And I'm sorry to cut you off. I actually just have to plug in my charger, so I'll be right back. But yeah, Nick, if you could just let us know about the TPS and the latency.
Yeah, of course. So I really like this question, Insane Ooze. I'm glad you asked it. The main thing to keep in mind, and this is something that we've been trying to work on, is the fact that we don't really have, there aren't really concrete metrics for how to measure a blockchain's performance. And I don't see anyone kind of converging on a set of metrics anytime soon. So the proxies that people use is basically transactions per second. But I don't really think that doesn't contain enough information to really tell you about how the blockchain really operates. Because just transactions per second tells you nothing about the cost, tells you nothing about the latency, tells you nothing about the security. There's so many other trade-offs that you have to make that transactions per second themselves are not very useful. In terms of how we've measured our own blockchains throughput and latency, we try to use the most sort of impartial, most honest and fair metrics. So we if anything, we try to like deflate and under exaggerate because we don't want to be one of those projects that's like selling a number that's kind of unimaginable or unachievable. And a lot of people actually kind of like misunderstood that in our original white paper, which said, 10 million transactions per second. And it was not that like, we want to just ship a 10 million transactions per second blockchain off the bat. the idea was that we wanted to build a blockchain that could scale to 10 million transactions per second eventually, when the demand was there, right? And so in terms of measuring it, in our previous test nets, we were able to achieve 10,000, and the next one we did 118,000 transactions per second, and that was all measured basically by how many transactions are validated in a given span of time. And then the latency, I think we were at like 1 minute latency, which is still like pretty late, but that's basically from the time the transaction is sent in to the time that it appears in a validated block. So, I mean, those numbers are also like quite old now, and we're constantly improving on that. Our new adaptive IDA algorithm syncs the blocks in a matter of seconds. So hopefully our latency will come down like a lot. But so basically stay tuned, and we will never really know until the network is live what the throughput and what the latency numbers are. So it's kind of anyone's guess, but at least in the testing environment, and when we launch our testnet, we'll get more concrete numbers.
Awesome. So listen, guys, we still have, I would say, just under 15 minutes. So you feel free to keep posting those questions. We have a few more left. Bitcoin Maximalist is asking about your ICO. So I don't know for sure if there's an ICO that you have planned, but if there's not, let us know what details might be there. And specifically, if you're going to be using any platforms like Open Token or Paper Street or anything like that.
Yeah, well, there's not really a plan to do an ICO. So sorry about that. If if you want to be involved in the network, you can look on our website and click on the partnership page, which will tell you about how you can get involved. And hopefully in the future, we'd love to have lots of people that help us run nodes. So again, we want to do it as we want to include as many people as possible, but in a compliant manner. And that's kind of the tricky thing, is how do you do this in a way that remains compliant with regulation? So
yeah, because the SEC is a thing.
Yes, it's a real thing. So, unfortunately, fortunately, this is also sort of the second mover advantage. We've seen the regulations come out, and we've seen projects get dinged. And for example, there's ongoing kind of court cases right now that are still defining where the law will kind of fall. And so we just want to be really, for the long-term viability of our project, we want to fall very much on the compliance side. So we're not trying to take any of those risks.
And I'm just curious where exactly you personally fall on the regulatory landscape. Like, do you think that some of these court cases being decided, or at least, the SEC's involvement in crypto compared to 2017 and earlier, they're a lot more heavily involved than they used to be. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What's your take there?
Yeah, this is my own personal opinion. I actually think what the SEC, what they've been doing is overall good. I think people, I don't know, for some reason the SEC in crypto is like synonymous with just kind of like a negative thing. Like they're trying to like stop everyone from innovating. I think in some ways, yes, like certainly by making it harder to ICO, maybe there's some great projects that want to find funding, and that's the only way that they can do it. But then on the flip side, I think we all like learned our lesson from the previous boom, which was that there were a lot of people fundraising that were scamming people, or even if they weren't scamming, they didn't really have they weren't quite legitimate enough to actually pull off what they were proposing. So I think in many ways, like regulation coming in is going to really kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, and kind of make it so that we have higher quality people fundraising in the future. And frankly, if you look at it, like a lot of these crypto tokens were just straight up securities. They were basically, even if they weren't like shares of a company, they were, these, assets that people were speculating on and hoping would appreciate in value because of something that the founders would be doing, right? Like they would be building this network, or they would be building this app, and that would increase the value of the tokens that I hold. So that's kind of the definition of a security. So it makes sense to me that that's kind of where they're leaning towards. I think fundamentally there's going to need to be more nuanced regulation around them, because if you think about Bitcoin, I wouldn't really call Bitcoin a commodity, but it seems like that's kind of where they're going. And I wouldn't call Ethereum a utility. Frankly, we're kind of crypto is introducing a new asset class that isn't really defined in the traditional regulatory sort of frameworks. But I think in the near term, the SEC is just kind of dealing with the most important things first, and then and honestly, crypto is evolving. So any kind of regulation they came out with now, like, it may not actually be relevant even a year from now, right? So I think they're watching closely. I think they're a lot smarter than we give them credit for, or most people do. And so I actually, give them a lot of credit for handling it the way they have. They haven't really, and even like, I know projects who they've even investigated, subpoenaed, and fined, and it hasn't been like terrible. Like they're actually kind of generous of just like letting people know, like, hey, you weren't compliant, like, do it better next time. And so they're just kind of like slapping people on the wrist, and they're not like trying to go and shut people down, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah. I would tend to agree with you. Yeah. We've got two more. So why don't we just try and run through these real fast before, 8 Eastern time or wherever you guys are at in the world. But Yiki is asking how you guys are going to ramp up to 100,000 nodes for the mainnet in mid 2019. I think you might have mentioned June.
Yeah. So I don't think so. At the outset, we don't want to have 100,000 nodes on the mainnet. I think that's a little bit unrealistic, and it'd be really expensive. I mean, it'd be awesome because we'd have a lot of throughput and we could support a lot of applications. But I don't imagine. I mean, even now, there's not a need for a blockchain that it has, hundreds of thousands of TPS, which would, I think, if our numbers from our previous testnet are any kind of guidance, if we had 100,000 nodes, we would have, around 250,000 transactions per second. And this is our testnet from earlier. I think we probably sped up from then. So there's no, like, I don't see anyone using, I don't know what kind of use case, that's like 5 visas. So I don't see, a need for that level of scale yet. But the idea is that eventually we want to get there again. It's sort of the same with the 10 million transactions per second. It's more like, long term, this is the kind of scale we want to reach. And so hopefully, with the foundational node program, with the node drop, also with people, hopefully the crypto economics work such that people see the benefit of they can actually make money by participating in the network, just like in Bitcoin or any of these other networks, crypto networks. Hopefully that will end up, incentivizing enough people to really join and contribute their computing power to us. So that's, I think any crypto network is in the end kind of an organic phenomena, and it grows, naturally. As long as you set the incentives right. So it's really on us to set the incentives and also to provide the seed. And that's where the foundational nodes come in. That's where a lot of the people that are involved, our original investors, will be running nodes to support the network. So that we need to seed the network with the minimum amount of throughput and the minimum amount of stakeholders, and then hopefully it can grow organically from there.
Right. I've seen on the white paper you talk about scaling linearly. So, gradually ramping up as it makes sense for the network that you're building.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of the white paper, our last question is coming from Vindine8, and they were wondering if, Nick, you could elaborate on something specifically on page 18. So I have a quote here. All right. So in the case of cross-shard communication, each shard is a light client of other shards. Ensuring that messages sent between shards are trustable is crucial for inter-shard data consistency. We are actively researching the topic of data availability and fraud proofs to securitize our protocol. So could you just elaborate on that and what that might mean for the future?
Yeah. So one of the original sharding papers was OmniLedger, and it came out of EPFL in Switzerland, and they proposed one of the main like problems in a sharded protocol is how do you perform cross-shard transactions? And in the OmniLedger case, they have a UTXO model, meaning that each transaction has a little unspent transaction output. And their solution to how to get one UTXO from one shard to another, if I wanted to pay someone else and another shard, was that the first shard would lock that UTXO and the client first would say, so the client is like the user, right? So the client is the person who is running their machine. That's like a wallet, and they're saying like, hey, my wallet says I have 10 Harmony tokens. I want to send 5 of them to this guy. And so the user would say that, then the client, the wallet would, come up with a transaction that would, execute that end goal. And so it would come up with a transaction that would say, it would send a message to the first shard, and the first shard would create a proof of lock on that UTXO. And then with that proof of lock would then go back to the client. This is the OmniLedger model. And the client, so the wallet then would have to wait for that, round trip of getting into that shard and being approved and creating that proof of lock and consensus. And it would come back to the wallet, and then the wallet would have to go and then send that transaction to the next shard. And then the next shard would have to come to consensus and say, okay, we see this proof of lock and we've generated the funds. So then that's how cross-shard transactions worked in OmniLedger, and that's called client-driven, meaning that the user with the wallet has to be the one doing this. And we've decided, well, our design is different for a couple of reasons. One is we're smart contract oriented, so we're using a account-based model. So it's not UTXOs. UTXOs tend to be more useful in a transaction-based blockchain, but we want to have more functionality. So we're doing account-based, which is basically that rather than UTXOs, you have basically a balance of your account in the state of each shard. And we've also decided that client-driven approach of the fact that the wallet has to wait for a round trip, and then it's a little bit too. We want to make it lighter for the person using their wallet and less heavy for them to interact with the blockchain. So instead, what we're doing is you just send that one transaction, it goes to that shard, it locks the funds there, and then it sends that. The shard itself is responsible to send that lock to the next destination shard. So no longer is it the user's responsibility to sit there and wait for consensus and then send that next transaction onward, because it becomes easier for the people, the end user. So that's kind of our approach. I'm trying to remember what else was in the question about. Fraud proofs. So fraud proofs are a really great way of basically making sure that any funds it's a very broad topic, but just in the context of what I've just been talking about, it's a way for people to, if there is any malicious behavior, like one shard is compromised or some validators decide to try to double spend or something in one shard, an observer can basically pick up on that and generate a proof saying that, hey, these guys are fraudsters, they're doing something bad, and let the other shards know. And then those people, get penalized. Maybe their stake is revoked or slashed or what have you. So fraud proofs are a really good way of basically making it so that it's more difficult. It's more secure. Even though the network is sharded, and in a sharded protocol, you could compromise one shard and do double spends. So the fraud proof is a way of trying to make it more secure. And if there is any foul play, you can detect it and penalize it. And there's a lot of, and data availability is also kind of feeds into all of that. And one of the cool things is using even erasure coding to try to make data availability. You can, I'm not the one to talk about this. So Chow and Steven have a little bit more experience in terms of erasure code and data availability problems. But using those techniques, you can kind of make sure that you can make sure that there's no foul play going on, but do it in a way where you don't have to sample everything and you don't have to trace all the history and all the transactions happening. You can kind of do it in a more statistical way where you sample a certain number of them, and then you can be pretty confident that everything else is going as along with the rules of the protocol. No one's cheating. So that's kind of where that all figures in, and that's kind of further down in the roadmap. So I think these are all things that are on our plate, and we want to build out and achieve, but they will come probably after the mainnet. kind of as additional features as we continue to add onto the protocol.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I got to say, I mean, we're not always able to get as deep into systems architecture with our guests. So this is a treat. Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we love chatting about that stuff, and we also have a forum where we discuss a lot of our research topics. So I also encourage anyone who's interested to hop on our forum, talk.harmony.one. So join us there if you have any questions. There's a lot of topics about all the things we've been talking about, very technical stuff, even in crypto economics. So
Cool.
join us there and ask some questions if you have any. We'd love to discuss with you and hear your thoughts as well.
That'd be great. Hey, one last quick question from Cryptocopia. We were just wondering if you see Zilliqa as your main competitor and how Harmony's better.
Yeah, I don't. I think Zilliqa is a very good project in terms of they were one of the first ones to really approach sharding seriously as a way to scale. But I think our design is fundamentally more robust and more scalable than Zilliqa's. First of all, like, they're doing proof of work, which I think has a lot of drawbacks. We discussed cost, even the way that they're doing their proof of work sharding. It seems like it's pretty easy to attack because it's not like ongoing proof of work. It's like a little sprint every once in a while to earn a slot in the network. The other thing is they're not doing full state sharding. They're sharding the validation of transactions, but they weren't sharding the storage. So every node has to actually hold the whole state. Which in the end that's not really sharding, because then the memory demands, the storage demands on each node get really high. So I think I really respect Zilliqa, and in fact they've done a lot of very fundamental great research. But I think in the end we are building sort of a little bit. We've gone a little bit deeper into the problem and solved some of the things that I think they didn't really tackle. And so for that reason, I think we will be more scalable and probably more cost effective and more secure than them when we launch.
Awesome. Well, Nick, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time out. We love, getting to hear some of the inner workings of Harmony. Could you just tell us real fast? I know we talked about the Discord and where we can reach you guys, but any places where we could reach the team and also where we can reach you and see what you're up to, what you're writing about and thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. So our website is harmony.one. You can reach out to us on Twitter. You can reach out to us on our Telegram. You can reach out to us on our Discord. We also have a lot of posts on Medium, and we have even started Bitcoin Talk forums, and I think we'll be also creating Reddit. So we're trying to get all our platforms covered. I think the best way, if you really want to talk to us, is either Telegram or Discord. That's where we're kind of most active in terms of, if you message us, we'll get back to you in a few minutes or maybe an hour at the most. We're very open. Please also check out our GitHub, Harmony One, and we really encourage anyone. Anyone can really contribute to Harmony. It's not, you don't have to be some whiz kid developer. You can even be someone who wants to be a community leader. You can be someone who wants to create graphics for us, or you want to contribute in whatever way you can, and we'd love to work with you. And we're very open, very welcoming. We really believe in the long-term vision. So if you align with us, then please reach out, and we would love to work with you and involve you in our project.
Okay, I love it. Well, listen, Nick, that concludes our AMA. Cryptocopia, we're going to be doing this once a week. I'm not sure if we've actually announced who we have next week, but make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. So we'll be announcing every week who we have upcoming with our AMA series. Nick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you again for taking the time out, and we'll make sure to watch what you guys are up to.
Well, Mike, thank you so much. It's also been a pleasure for me. And thank you to the whole Cryptocopia community. Thank you for all your great questions. I hope that you learned a little bit about Harmony, and we would love to continue the conversation and teach you more. And hopefully, one day you